Hey everybody, welcome to the April 12th RMF Q&A. I see we have some watchers already. So I'm going to pull up my notes here. It'll just take a second. And please, by the way, give me a thumbs up if you can see and hear me okay. I'll be monitoring your comments here on my phone because I only have one monitor where I am, one computer where I am today. Unlike when I'm at home, I have my regular setup with other monitors. So first I wanted to just welcome all the new members that we've gotten lately to the private group. We've had a rash of them lately, and I hope that you guys will let me know whether you're finding everything you need to get educated. And now I need to turn my volume down here. And if you're watching this live stream Q&A for the first time, I just want to explain that the kind of information that you'll hear today is what I share in the private RMF subscription group every day. If you're a member of the public RMF group, you will occasionally see either me or one of the other admin responding to a comment or a post, but the public group is mostly intended as a peer-to-peer forum for people to share their experiences with RMF and ask questions of other dog owners who are using RMF. So if you want what some people might call guidance from experts or people who have been doing RMF for a long time, that's what we do in the private group. And I heartily recommend joining if you like the information that you hear today. I do these live streams every Saturday, and I take live questions from attendees, and I also do research on the questions that are submitted ahead of time and other topics that I come across that require more information. And I do that every Saturday, except the fourth Saturday in the month when we have our mini consultations where I sit down with 2 or 3 members and go over their situations with their dogs and make suggestions about how they can improve their dog's health. And there is much more available to subscribers, and it's available very cheaply, including a library full of information you can't find elsewhere, hundreds of previously recorded Q&A videos, and much, much more. And if you're a regular viewer of these Q&As, you will note that I'm in a different place today. I am in Western Washington right now, caring for a grumpy old shepherd mix named Mario. Okay, go ahead and get your questions in the queue if you have them. And I have a few questions that were submitted by subscribers in advance, and I like to make sure that I address those. So I'm going to talk about those first, and then I will start taking questions from the attendees. So the first question, sorry about that. The first question comes from a subscriber named Jackie. She says, "Hi, Nora. My dogs are both around 6 years old. I hadn't weighed them for a year, so I decided to do so yesterday. They had both lost 4 pounds. I thought I'd been giving them 3.5% of their weight, but I'd actually been giving them 3.7%. We've gotten used to Bo's looks, but we still see Ruthie as bony, and I cover her with a t-shirt if I think she's going to be around people who will make comments. Here are my questions. How do I know when I'm supposed to reduce their food intake because of their advancing ages? Do I wait for symptoms to show? They have none right now that I can see. Or do I go by how old they are? I'm guessing I'd go by symptoms, right?" So that's the end of the question. And first I have to address the preciseness of the amount that she's feeding. And my opinion about that is that 0.2% are not going to matter in the least. I never weigh the food that I give my dog. I have no idea how much food I give her. I recommend that people move away from weighing food eventually. The percentage range that is meant to get people started is just a general quantity that will adequately but not excessively fuel their dog. So it's just a general range. The truth is that nobody in the world knows to the 0.1% how much food a dog needs. So anyway, if anybody has experimented enough with their dog to pin it down that far to the 10th of a percent, because they know that going beyond that produces symptoms, it's totally fine. But I don't want anyone to think that they have to do that, that they have to be that exact. So apart from that, bony, quote unquote, is in the eye of the beholder. And I've seen very few dogs, even dogs whose owners describe them as too skinny, that I would really characterize as bony. And I've not seen pictures of this particular dog, so I have to assume that her weight is probably on the slim side, but otherwise fine, since that's the case most of the time. So to answer your question about going by symptoms instead of age, I would say yes, absolutely. That's what I do with my animals and even my own body. I don't eat to make myself rounder or bonier. I eat to fuel myself, and I use my own symptoms or lack of them to determine if I'm getting adequate or excessive fuel. This has nothing to do with my body shape. Being without symptoms, having lots of energy, having clear thinking, and a happy feeling inside signals to me that I'm not overeating. When I do have symptoms and don't feel good, and nothing else could potentially be to blame for that, like maybe lack of sleep or something, I suspect I've overeaten. And always when I correct that, I feel better. And that's what I do with my dog too. But this is less apparent in dogs, of course, because we're not inside them. We don't feel what they feel. But we can generally see when they're asymptomatic. We can see when they're energetic and happy. And these are the signals that should guide us in our long-term RMF dogs. Now, speaking of long-term RMF dogs, I have to say that when dogs are new or when people are new, it's an entirely different story, because much of what dogs go through early on is related to old stuff coming out. Once that process is complete, then you just have to find that sweet spot where the dog is being adequately fed for his or her fuel needs. And that has very little to do with body shape. It's really unfortunate that our culture is so fixated on eating in order to manage weight. It's a ridiculous and distracting obsession that creates confusion and just keeps us out of touch with our body's true needs. And when you start eating a biologically appropriate diet or doing that for your dog gets in touch with their needs, and which we really can't read very well, but we get in touch with our needs. And that's super important. That's the only thing that should guide your consumption, not what time of day it is, whether other people are eating, or your body shape. So I know how foreign these ideas may be to people hearing them for the first time, but they're just based on the objective truths that I've observed over a period of 25 years, eating and feeding my animals a biologically appropriate diet. Okay, so this person has another question. She says they're on a 2 meat to 1 fruit rotation. I have a feeling I'm going to have a hard time adding in regular fast days. I'm accounting for no fasting now by giving them 3 to 4% on fruit days. Although I know it's impossible to know, could it be enough for us to continue our same rotation and just reduce percentages as they get older instead of fasting? And my answer to that is, I think you can gather what my answer is by my answer to the last question, because this one's pretty much unanswerable, because only by seeing what effect the quantities and rotation you're currently feeding have on your dogs will you be able to know how much to feed them and whether fasting may be necessary. Now, I realize that this may make you feel insecure, but it shouldn't, because this is precisely the power that RMF puts in your hands and nobody else's. I wish everyone could recognize that since they're the ones who live with their pets, they are best qualified to know this information. Almost everybody in the world just abdicates this power to a label on a pet food bag. Those people that make kibble don't know how much food your dog needs every day. Now, personally, I've only had a handful of senior animals since I've been feeding RMF, but my experience is that they do need fasting days. It could be that it's not necessary for every senior dog or cat. I've just found it to be necessary with mine in order to keep them asymptomatic all the way until they reach their natural death. I don't know. I don't know the case about every, senior dog and cat out there. But I would say most likely, eventually, you're going to have to prepare yourself for fasting days. And hopefully, along the way, you will see that it's necessary to do that in order to avoid symptoms, because you will see symptoms when you don't that you won't see when you do fast. So that kind of teaches you a lesson. Okay, next question. I had a member last week who asked me about a persistent rash on her dog's chin. And she asked if feeding almond butter every day could account for it. And I said the only way to know that is to take it away and see if the rash improves. And I also said that the rash could be part of detox if the dog is new. But as it turns out, the dog is not new to RMF. She's been on RMF for 3 years. And the owner says that she recently got rid of some junky treats that she had been using and was thinking maybe the rash was the residues of the treats coming out. And I suppose that's possible. But the owner also says that she stopped feeding meat for a full year, which wouldn't be RMF, by the way, even though sometimes giving a dog a break from meat is necessary. Then she did an extended fast with the dog, after which the dog was able to digest meat just fine. And the dog is now doing great on a regular meat rotation. But since I don't know the particulars of what's being fed and how much, I can't even make suggestions about what could be causing the rash. It might be the omitting of the junky treats, but it could also be that the rash is a consequence of overfeeding currently. And the only way to know that is to lower consumption and see if it helps with the rash. Or try another fast, which I would expect would either clear up the rash or greatly improve it. If you do try these experiments, I tell people to improve or to make one change at a time so you'll know what to attribute the improvements to. Like take out the almond butter and give it a good month. And then if nothing happens, then you can try something else like fasting or decreasing quantities. Okay, next question. I've just got a few more here. Does anyone not fast their dog? I'm finding it hard to do because she is needing to take a diuretic tablet in food. What are the disadvantages with not fasting? Is it just slower detox? Thank you. Well, I happen to know that this particular dog is new to RMF, and the owner is currently in the process of either tapering the dog off of the drug or she will be soon. In the meantime, there's nothing wrong with giving the dog a bite or two of food in order to get the pill in. It doesn't necessarily negate everything positive that happens during a fast, especially for a dog that's brand new to RMF. But on the other hand, there's no pressure to fast a dog that's new unless there's something serious going on that indicates that fasting is the best course of action. And here I'm talking about an extended fast or a therapeutic fast. But I think probably what this member is referring to is routine fasting days that are built into the rotation. And that's really a question I can't answer because there are probably situations where a dog is so toxic that feeding every day and allowing a slower detox is the best thing to do. Sometimes it's not, and a faster detox would be better. Like if a dog has a tumor that's threatening to close the airway or close the esophagus, or may start to bleed internally, or if fluids are ending up where they shouldn't be and they need to be drained periodically. But the general rule is, unless there's a life-threatening situation, you want the detox to be as comfortable as possible. There are times when a fast detox may save the life of the dog. So it's very situational. And that's why it's pretty much impossible for me to answer this question, except to impart to you just the general rule that fasting speeds up the healing process and feeding slows it down. Okay. Okay, this person also wants to know about incontinence in older female dogs. She says, could you give your thoughts on what causes incontinence in older female dogs And do you think it has to do with early desexing as often thought by people? Well, this is a more complicated question than it seems to be, because there are so many factors involved, including hormones and possible damage to the organs during the spay surgery, which is why senior incontinence is more common in females than males. It is thought there might be other reasons too. And of course, lifelong misfeeding. I think that's the main reason, is lifelong misfeeding. But if the organs have been damaged during the spay surgery, the dog will probably be incontinent her whole life, like from the time of the surgery on. As far as answering the question about whether neutering and spaying increases the likelihood of it, the research definitely shows that it does, although the mechanical component in females contributes. Hormones play a part too, and male dogs have hormones too. But I think the biggest factor of all, like I said, is how the dog is fed, because all of the body's organs are going to live to their full potential if they're not bathed every day in uneliminated metabolic waste, like those that are produced from a diet of commercial pet food. Okay, one more question from the regular subscribers. Is RMF more challenging for a dog that is very food driven, and why are some dogs more food driven than others? Well, I will say it's definitely more challenging for the owners. That's why when people complain about their dog's lack of interest in food, initially I tell them they're lucky. If a dog is used to being overfed and getting fed on a predictable schedule, I suppose it might be considered challenging for him to adjust to the new ways. But whether it's challenging or not, it's what needs to be done to ensure that the dog has a long, healthy life. That's the main thing. It's completely normal for dogs to forage for food, so all dogs are going to be naturally food driven. But some domestic dogs are so overfed that their digestive systems are constantly working, and this means they may not look for feeding opportunities as much as a dog normally would. And of course, this is going to change after RMF. I think it's actually abnormal for dogs to not look for feeding opportunities because their digestive systems are not supposed to be working all the time. Neither are ours. But what happens when a dog does forage can greatly shape his drive to look for other chances to eat, because a big payoff just does not get forgotten about. Apart from the physical hazards of dogs getting a big jackpot in the form of maybe a trash can full of chicken fat or leftover turkey bones, it also sets up a very dangerous precedent for the future that can be really hard to manage. My dog, for example, was never much of a forager until I took her to someone else's house where she found food lying around, and it wasn't right on the floor. It was where she could get out with a little trouble. So it was possible for her to get to it, and she did. And although it took a little effort, she really got in the habit of foraging. And before that, in my home, it's not even worth trying because everything is way above her. So now she's practically unstoppable because of those early payoffs. It's like trying to convince a gambler that they're never going to win big again. Once they've already won a jackpot, they're always going to keep going back. So that's kind of what happened with my dog, and it's unfortunate. So if you manage this well early on, you can save yourself a lot of trouble. So I see we have some watchers, but I don't see any comments, and I'm not sure I'm seeing them. Okay. Do you guys have any questions? You folks that are here? I'll just wait while you type them in. Does nobody have any questions? Geez, if you don't have any questions, I guess this will be the first 20-minute live Q&A that I've ever done. Kelly. Oh yeah, I was hoping that Sonia, Kelly wanted to know, she says, did you see the question about fat that Sonia asked? And I did see it, And she said she just wanted to know more about feeding fat to dogs, and that's a huge topic. I was hoping that she would be here so that she could pin down the question a little bit more. I guess I could just give some general information about fat, but I've already said so much about it already in the form of, I've probably written more blog articles about fat than any other topic. And it's a very sensitive subject out there in the raw feeding world, because there are lots of people who insist that dogs need as much fat as they're currently getting. And the typical domestic dog gets way too much fat. And that's because the commercial dog food industry thrives on this river of fat that is constantly flowing out of the animal agriculture industry. It is a waste product that we use for many other many non-food applications out there. Many other products out there in the marketplace have animal fat in them, but one of the main consumers of this waste product that comes out of animal agriculture is the pet food industry. And even if they don't go to the agriculture industry and buy blobs of fat only, what they're getting are those parts of the animal that you never see in the meat case. Chicken backs, turkey necks, turkey tails, pork hocks. I don't know what a pork hock is actually. There are so many very fatty parts of animals, and these animals can be raised organically. They can be raised free range. They can be raised in such a way that the producers are able to say fantastic things about their product that will fool you into buying them. Because what really matters is those parts are extremely fatty. They're disproportionately fatty. A turkey tail is probably 90% fat, if you've ever seen one. You've probably seen a chicken tail. They're completely fat. And the only thing that is intended for pet food that is sold generally in a regular supermarket are these, what they call soup bones or marrow bones. And they are all completely fat too, because that's the only edible part of the bone. The rest is so hard that it can break your dog's teeth. And in spite of that, we have lots of people out there still buying these things because they have the label on them that the butchers put on there that say they're pet bones, right? Or soup bones. So anyway, with all of this commercialism that's happening, and all of the indoctrination and brainwashing that has gone on with respect to dog owners, we have lots of people feeding excess fat to their dogs, just so much fat. When you run these products through the guaranteed analysis converter that I have shared in the private group many, many times, including in a video where I show you exactly how I run guaranteed analyses, those percentages, those deceptive percentages that you see on the back of labels. When I run those through the analysis, the converter, what comes out is amazing, because what you will see on the label is 6% or 5% or even less. And sometimes when people see 10% or 13% on there, they think that's great. That's totally fine. Well, it's not, because once you run it through and you find out how much of the product is contributed by fat and how much is contributed by protein, then you find out that it's a mismatch. It's a flip-flop from what dogs get in the wild. What they get in the wild is twice the protein that they get in fat. Twice, yeah. The ratio should be 2 to 1. But instead, we have it in the other direction. Two parts fat to 1 part protein, which is a recipe for disease. It's one of the main reasons why chronic disease is so widespread. And, that's apart from the the fact that commercial foods are just so very bad. They're just much worse. People think we're being looked out for by the FDA and the USDA and the veterinary industry and the pet food industry. But the Mars candy bar company, they don't get involved in pet food because they care about your dog or cat. Just like they didn't care, what motivated them to start making candy bars in the first place wasn't how much they cared about kids and humans. No, they just wanted to sell their products. So we have to guard against this just blatant commercialism and exploitation because it's making our animals sick. So, okay, I hope that covered part of what Sonia had in mind with her question. What else did she ask about? Oh, she asked about liver, and I just talked about this a couple weeks ago. But in the 80-10-10 way of thinking, the prey model feeding way of thinking, they tend to tell people that you should make 10% of what you're feeding your dog every day that you feed meat is organ meat. And I say, I don't think anybody has any definite information about that, because what I've read in the field research is that when wild dogs first make a kill as a pack, especially of a large ungulate, and this doesn't go for when they consume smaller animals, because when they consume smaller animals, they do eat all of the organs. But if they're part of a pack, they don't. They eat large ungulates a lot, in which case they have to share with the other pack members. So they will eat the alpha or the parent. The alpha are actually usually the parents, and they will get the organs first. That's what I've heard. That's what I've read in the field research. And the lesser subordinate members of the pack will get what's left over. So they will get some flesh too, but maybe not the organs, maybe not those highly valued, livers and hearts and spleens and other so-called secreting organs. So what that means is that on some days, some dogs will be getting lots of organ meat. Others will be getting none at all. And who knows how long those subordinate members of the pack would go without eating a secreting organ or even getting a chance to eat any. So who can say that 10% is the ideal? I don't really get into conversations or debates with people about this because it's kind of a harmless rule. If people want to take what is meant to be kind of a general guideline and make it a rule, that's totally fine. And there's probably nothing wrong with it. I don't observe it myself because the only secreting organ that my dog gets is in the form of dehydrated livers that I make myself. I dehydrate them myself. And she gets no fresh liver. Once in a while, maybe if I happen to have some thought out for my cat, I do give liver to my cat. He likes it. And I will, put some in the bowl if I'm feeding her a meat day. But other than that, that's all she gets. And she seems to be perfectly fine. She's going to be 8 years old. She's never been to a vet, except once when she was like 11 months old. She had a minor back injury, and I had to have that diagnosed because I wanted to know what was going on with her. And we do have to do that sometimes with dogs. So does anybody else have any questions? Kelly, can you think of anything that you would like to hear me blab about? But he just wanted to let somebody else answer or ask the questions. So I'll give you guys like a minute. And let me see, what else can I blab about? I wasn't prepared. Everybody's being shy today. Okay. Well, I guess I could talk about random things, but that's kind of a challenge for me. Oh, there's a question by Joy. Oh, Okay, now they're starting to line up. Great. Okay, I guess there was a delay. What do I think about rabies shots that are required? Oh, that's a subject for a really deep dive, and I've done some really deep dives on rabies, including questioning the entire rabies narrative that has been crammed into our consciousness via movies and TV shows, and the gullible populace that buys all of that nonsense about rabies, and vets. And then we have the jab manufacturers, who of course want us to think that it's a legitimate thing. Rabies is a legitimate thing, right? Be afraid, be very afraid. Fear sells things, right? It sells vaccines. So yeah, of course, no, I'm not in favor of jabbing chemicals into healthy dogs, and it's completely counterproductive. And the only legitimate, in our crazy culture, reason for jabbing a dog is because it's being required of you, and I'm talking about that it's actually being enforced upon you, or if you have a legitimate fear of liability. If your dog is aggressive, or if he's around children, or if there's any potential for a dog biting someone, it's a huge mess legally, if and medically, if he happens to bite somebody who is fearful of rabies. And even if they're not, if they present in a hospital or to a doctor, they will probably be pressured into what's called PEP, which is post-exposure prophylaxis, which is a series of shots that can kill people on their own, and it does. But then, of course, the original bite from the dog always gets the blame. So when you dive deeply into rabies, you find out it's a completely ridiculous, made up, fictionalized narrative. And there are real explanations for the symptoms that we call rabies that happen in wild dogs. And notice that rabies hasn't wiped out wild animals out there that don't have any human contact. No, the only so-called rabies victims that are wild animals are the ones that live close to our garbage piles and close enough to get fed Oreos every day. And when they show up with symptoms, that's what we need to look at, not any submicroscopic particle, as is the case with the rabies narrative. Okay, so I will move on from rabies. I hope that was satisfactory. Okay, Suzanne has a question. Where did that wrong? My cat has a hyperactive thyroid, too active. She is thin and meows for food every hour. I am feeding her raw, low-fat, grass-fed stew meat and heart meat which for the time, I'm not seeing the rest of your question. Maybe you're still typing. So first she says that her cat's a 17-year-old. She loves stew meat and heart meat. Well, I need to know how long she has been raw fed. So that's the first thing. And this cat is hyperthyroid, which means her thyroid is working too hard. And Suzanne, I'm getting these faster on my phone than on my PC. And Suzanne says she is new. She's new to raw feeding, new to the program, so new to RMF. Well, what you can do, there is somebody in the public group who has been challenged with this particular condition, hyperthyroid, because hypothyroid, you just supplement, right? You give the dog or the cat thyroid supplements, or while you correct the diet, and hopefully that will solve the problem, so you can then wean the dog off of the thyroid medication. But in the case of hyperthyroid, I think what vets do, I think what they do in humans is they just disable or they radiate the thyroid and put it out of commission completely. And then you have basically the same situation that you have with the hypothyroid problem. And that's just a matter of giving a thyroid supplement. So what I'm thinking is that, and I wanted to reference this person in the public group who her name is Danielle, and she has, I think, 6 cats, and one of them is hyperthyroid and has been hyperthyroid for many years. And she has, and the cat is elderly. And yeah, her name is Danielle Nazier. Kelly is posting it. She posts a lot in the public group about her cat that is hyperthyroid, and her cat is getting to be elderly. I don't recall how old the cat is now. She's really a beautiful long-haired tuxedo, and she has a boy name, but it's escaping me right now. But anyway, she has managed all of that without medication for many years, and cat, the cat's symptoms are minimal, from what I understand. And she has done that with proper feeding, which is what you're doing, and fasting, extended fasting. So I think she's done like 7-day fasts with the cat or long weekend fasts with the cat minimally. Oh, the cat's name is Ted. That's right. I knew she had a boy name. Anyway, Suzanne says she loves the stew meat and the heart meat, and that's great because that's your biggest hurdle as a cat owner. The biggest problem of dealing with cats, especially 17-year-old cats. I can't tell you how lucky you are that she is eating this stuff, because it's totally fine if she refuses it and refuses to eat some days. It's totally fine. But the fact that she is eating it other times and loving it is success, because all you have to do now is keep feeding her raw food. And hopefully at some point that thyroid will normalize itself. At some point, you might be able to fast her if you get her. She's very skinny, so usually we're warned against fasting cats, but that usually applies to fat cats. With skinny cats, I think even if they're very toxic, it might be a problem. So I would recommend just feeding her very lean, clean foods until such a time as you start to see improvements. I think you could probably feed her a lot initially to see if maybe you can get her weight up a little bit, because just the improvements in diet are going to allow her body to do a lot of healing. Okay. And I hope you will consider joining the subscription group so we can keep an eye on that situation. Okay, I have a question from Anne. Okay, Suzanne had a little follow-up. She has periods where she refused to eat the raw food, but I did not know fasting was good for her in the past and gave her terrible canned food. Ooh, won't do that anymore. No, that's like rewarding her when she forgoes the raw food. So you don't want to do that at all. You want to hold out as much as you can so that she ends up eating the raw food. Okay, so moving on to Anne's question. She says, my 6-year-old border collie has been on RMF all of his life. I noticed tiny droplets of blood. This was after he came in from peeing a few days ago. I contacted a holistic vet and she asked about his diet. I explained about the rotation and the vet said he needs more meat and less fruit and more veggies. Urinary tract infection crystals. Well, I have read that and in the meantime, while I'm answering that part of your question, maybe you can tell us what sort of rotation he's on, because I have read in the literature that an alkaline urinary stream is causal of UTIs because the urine is too alkaline. It needs to be more acidic. And that's probably what the information that she is going on to. But I would say not necessarily. And I'm still waiting to find out Oh, Suzanne's already in the subscription group. Oh, good. Um, anyway, until I know what sort of rotation this border collie is on, I can't really say whether he needs more meat or less fruit and veggies or whatever, but I'm sure that's where the vet is going in her head. And you would just have to experiment to find out which one works better. Sweet potatoes, carrots, watermelon, fruit, Cornish hen. And have you tried fasting him? Because unfortunately, before you do anything else, if I saw something like that, before I even tweak the diet or change the rotation, I would fast the dog, because there's definitely some irritation and maybe even inflammation going on in the urinary tract. And I just did a podcast. It's actually a public podcast, so I can post it in the description for this video if you're interested in watching that. But I covered UTIs and how well they respond with fasting. So there are all kinds of potential improvements that you can make to the diet. And with a dog that has been on RMF for his whole life, 6 whole years, then you could definitely employ fasting. And this might even be the signal that you may start to need to tweak the diet a bit more. And by tweak, I mean adding more fasting days, getting rid of the cooked food, feeding fruit instead of cooked food, and carrots. Carrots are a bit starchy, and that's why I usually recommend that they be cooked. But for that reason, they're not optimal. So this may just be a general signal that he's gotten to the point where you need to start reducing things, and maybe having a fasting day instead of a fruit day, instead of a veggie day or whatever. So, okay. Anything else, guys? Okay. All right. So we got those questions answered. I don't see anything else. Only been here 42 minutes, but that's okay. I got a lot I can do today. Sun shining outside, which is rare in Western Washington. Okay, guys. I'll give you another minute, and I'll sign off here. Okay, Mary has a question. Is it okay to feed fruit along with quinoa or lentils? I really wouldn't do that. I have mixed fruit with quinoa before, but that was because I was preparing meals in advance for somebody. I was making meals for her dog and delivering them to her once a week or once every couple of weeks. And so I would prepare all of the food and put it in a container and then freeze it again. And she was a normie type of person. She expected to see lots of variety on her dog's plant days. She probably wouldn't have fed her dog just like bananas or a mono meal of fruit like I recommend that people do. So I had to sort of meet her expectations and accept that a little bit of compromise was necessary. And so for that reason, I made meals of quinoa and cooked yams and blueberries, and sometimes I would put green peas in there, baby spinach sometimes, bananas sometimes. I wouldn't mix bananas and sweet peas. I think that's kind of bizarre. But those other foods are, they just seem sweeter, a better combination. I don't know. Anyway, didn't really have any rhyme no reason for the combo, but I would do that. And her dog did absolutely great on the rotation. Unfortunately, she didn't keep it up. So the dog's big and fat now, and not doing very well, although she's still very active. But anyway, I would not mix fruit with either quinoa or lentils if you were feeding your own dog. I would never do that for my dog. I mean, I suppose I did at one point early on when I was experimenting, but I don't do that. Um, and yes, I would say that mono meals are better because it really makes digestion a whole lot less complicated for either yourself or your dog if your body doesn't have to figure out what chemicals breaks down what food item. Like meat requires an acidic medium in order to be digested, but plant foods require an alkaline medium in order to be digested. And Chemistry 101 says acid and alkaline neutralize each other. So what that means is that if you eat these very incompatible foods together, then your digestive fluids are going to be neutralizing each other, and far less of the food is going to be getting digested. And when we understand that this undigested food and uneliminated metabolic waste causes so much, in fact, the majority of disease in dogs and humans, you start to see how important it is to make digestion as efficient as possible. And there can be no other way of doing that than eating when you're hungry, feeding your dog only when he's hungry, and feeding one food at a time. So it's so effortless for the body. I mean, look at, the way dogs eat in nature. They don't go out and gather some berries and then go dig up a carrot and kill a rabbit and take it over to under a bush and mix it all together and eat it. They don't do that at all. The only time they would potentially mix plant foods is when they eat a small animal and there are plant foods in the stomach contents. But it's been observed by field researchers that when they have the option of not eating the stomach contents, they exercise that option because they will pull the stomach out and tear it open and shake loose the contents, and then they will eat the tissue that is the rumen or the stomach itself. So they avoid mixing plant foods with meat when they can. And they can't when it's a small animal, but that's one reason, because they're incompatible. And it might also be that pre-digested leaves and grasses that large ungulates eat are not food for wild dogs. So that might be another reason. But we definitely don't see dogs combining foods that are different in character out there in the wild. So I've been doing sweet potatoes and carrots, so best to do just sweet potatoes alone. Those two foods are probably fine together. Either way, I mean, I for people who are new, I like the combination of quinoa and sweet potatoes, or quinoa and carrots. It seems to make kind of a well-rounded meal that keeps new dogs satisfied. But cooked food is controversial. Some people don't like it. It puts us in the crosshairs of some people who vilify cooked food. So it's totally up. I leave it completely up to the dog owner. I've gone into great detail in many of my live streams about why somebody might want to feed cooked foods. There are all kinds of reasons, like it's cheap. Maybe they live out in some rural area where they can't get to the store once a week to buy fruit. And it's all kinds of reasons why people might choose to feed cooked foods. And we have to remember that we're trying to attract people who think that putting meat and potatoes and vegetables and other, non-food additives into a crock pot for a few hours and then feeding all that to their dog, they think that's perfect, right? So if we can get something that gets them a little closer to RMF, and let's face it, the people who think that that's a perfect dog meal are going to be more attracted to, just like my former client was, or attracted to making a meal for their dog of vegetables and quinoa together than they are sitting down and feeding their dog, 3 bananas. that seems completely bizarre to people coming from the, normie way of feeding dogs. So, it's a way to make people more comfortable while they get more at ease with all of RMF and what it can potentially do, for a dog's health. Well, they're all carbohydrates. And for my purposes, I've often separated it just to simplify for everybody. I like to separate meat from plant foods, and plant foods, just about any plant foods fed together are going to be a huge improvement over that mishmash that most people feed in the form of commercial pet food, because the pet food producers think that throwing everything in there and telling you that it's complete and balanced is what will make you buy the product. And unfortunately, it works. So that's what people think when they come in, right? And what they want to do is when they have a plant meal, when they make up a plant meal for a dog, they want to throw all kinds of plants in there because they think variety is better, right? They think it's better. It's not. But quinoa is a carbohydrate. It's a long chain carbohydrate, and so are sweet potatoes, and so are carrots. So they're all what people call complex carbohydrates. So simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates are not such a good combination, but it's no big deal if you're new, if you're just starting out. Okay, I hope that answers that. The main thing is to make what you're doing now a major improvement over what the dog was eating before. And that's how you end up seeing major improvements in your dog's health, even if it has to be slow, if it has to be a slow transition. So, and by slow, I mean like more meat, more cooked foods, and, allowing the dog's body to free up less energy for deep cleaning. Because what happens when a dog gets thrown into a fast detox is the body suddenly has lots of energy that it can devote to getting rid of those previous wastes that it was holding on to, and that were uneliminated in the body. So all of that stuff, the body automatically senses that it has the opportunity now to make organs more functional, to make the bloodstream more pure, and to potentially extend the life and increase the current energy and health of the dog. So the body is so wise and has so much capacity for looking after itself. What we're trying to do with RMF is just get out of the way. So I hope I didn't go too far afield with that. Okay, any other questions? Last call for questions. Okay, well, next week will be the normal Q&A, which will start at noon on Saturday, and I'll be back in my regular home by then. And then the week after that, we will have the mini session, the mini consultation session, and that is already fully booked. So, and I do take a waiting list for that if you're a member, and because I often have cancellations, sometimes have cancellations. So if you want to sign up for that and you're a subscriber, please do that. Oh, what do you recommend if the dog gets thin? Well, that's a huge question. It's very loaded. I'd have to know a lot of information, background information about what's going on with the dog, because dogs can get thin because they are malabsorbed, which just means that you can feed and feed and feed and feed. And like this kitty with the hyperthyroid, she's got a condition where her body's just in a very fast metabolic mode, and she's not going to hold weight. She's just not going to keep on weight. So there are conditions in dogs that cause them to become very thin. If you're talking about an RMF dog, thin is in the eye of the beholder. So people do think that their dogs are thin when they're on RMF, but what's wrong with normedom out there in the dog world is that it is thought that dogs are supposed to be round in the middle, and they're not. And when dogs develop this svelte waistline that they're supposed to have, and when you reach out and touch them and you don't feel that blubber that you used to feel, that you actually like to feel, then people can get kind of alarmed about that. And I say, feed more. Feed more if your dog gets thin. Absolutely. But if you see symptoms, it could be that you're expecting your dog to look like a normie dog at the dog park. And normie dogs at the dog park are all courting disease. And one of the symptoms of disease is that extra blubber that they carry around their midsections. So part of it is that people have to change their expectations about what their dogs are supposed to look like. And part of it might be that they need to feed more. It might be that they need to feed more meat. Meat is generally what keeps fat on dogs, keeps body weight on dogs. So if you want to, pinpoint your question a little more and tell me if you're talking about an RMF dog or a regular dog, hopefully I covered all bases there. But if you have other questions, I'd be happy to entertain those. It's making noises, and I don't know why. Okay, guys, last call. Is tomorrow Easter? I think tomorrow is Easter. Oh, well. I guess have a happy Easter then, if tomorrow's Easter. I'm not sure about that. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap things up here because I don't see any more questions. I hope I've been able to answer some questions and be a little bit informative and educational for people here. So thanks, you guys, for attending. I really appreciate that. And hopefully I will see some of you in the live stream next week. So until then, take care, everybody, and have a good week. Bye-bye.